Hey, what's up? It's me, Awesome Alley.
And I'm Raisa, and welcome back to another episode of the Be in the Conversation series. The book has officially launched! And today we are here with one of our authors who actually has one of the first chapters in our book. He's going to be talking to you about your emotions and unveiling your true identity. So please welcome Sameer!
Woo! Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you guys now, because when we had our first conversation, I think it was back in September, I was just launching coaching, and it was just like the beginning of that part of this journey. Now we're on this other side of the journey, right? And it's having collaborated and created this book together. It's very much a dream come true. And there's so much energy of like what we have yet to create. That's what we were just talking about, right? So I'm so happy to be here with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh.
Much love to you, brother. Yes, as Sameer was saying, we first interviewed Sameer back in September, and he was launching his Red Oak coaching, with what's the thing, like metaphors, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, alchemy?
The alchemy, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Alchemizing emotions and changing them, yeah.
Yes, and now he's just wrote his book titled, what's the chapter title?
Behind the Mask.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because of the timeline we're in right now. Everyone's wearing an actual face mask, right? So, but that's not the type of mask we're talking about in this chapter. And if you don't mind, I'll just go into a little bit about the chapter. Okay. It's really just showing your true self to the world, right? Being your most authentic self. These are buzzwords, especially with social media. We hear it all the time. It's be you, be yourself. And I think now it's easier to make it a slogan than it is to actually practice it, and actually be that. And especially where there's so much self-consciousness, especially with social media, people get lost in kind of this identity they think they are, and they project out into the world. And I think we've all experienced this, right? We have a mask when we're with our family, like there's that version of us. Then there's that version of us that's at work, which is a very different version. And then there's that other version, might be with our friends or at school, another version completely with your partner, if you have a relationship. And it's just these other sides to us. But what happens when we actually forget that underneath our kind of, what I would say, shape-shifting, or our ability to kind of chameleon and kind of be with different people, where are we in that equation? And I think a lot of the mental health issues right now are a result of comparison, a lot of over expectations people place on themselves because they think they need to be somewhere other than where they are, because they see on Instagram people are living their lives, but they have zero context to what those lives are. And really being real with yourself and coming into a place of radical acceptance, which is one of the themes in my chapter, is being able to accept the entirety of who you are, your entire past. Most people have experienced some dysfunction in their past, some kind of trauma, some kind of pain that has made them feel like, I wish this didn't happen. And I wish this wasn't part of my story. I wish I didn't have to know every day, even though all these other good things are happening, that this past happened to me. And that's where the mask really gets created, when you're trying to run away from who you are, and you want to show the world you're not that thing that you're associated with, or the past that you're associating with. And so for people to gain a level of, I would say, consciousness with themselves, a level of presence with themselves, where they can actually accept themselves, right? Beyond the judgments they might even have, or beyond the judgments they've experienced from others, to say, I'm going to still show up as I am, and I'm going to be real about the life I've had, and I'm going to actually be vulnerable about it. So it hopefully, support somebody else in whatever capacity that might be. But really removing the mask is where the truth lies. That's where the beauty of who we all actually are comes out. And we see it in kids, right? Yeah. And kids are the most beautiful expression of that, because they don't hold themselves back. And we as adults, right, when get the selfie camera on, turn on the smile, right? You're jumping on, you're like checking your face, you're going in the mirror, right? All of those subtle things are parts of our mask. Right? Those subtle little things where we think we have to do something to be seen a certain way, rather than just showing up as we are. We all go to the washroom, we all burp, right? We all have those very basic human things, but yet we get caught up in trying to show this perfect image of ourselves. So that's kind of the essence of the chapter.
Yeah, I think you perfectly described it. I'm like, all right, let's just like wrap it up right here and like toss it on. But
for sure.
there's actually a few things that I want to point out, and I think even last week when we were talking with Angie about social media, we were talking about those different perspectives and the aggressive algorithm of favoring one perspective, and I think the side of social media I've been on is enlightenment. And I find that a lot of people are now ditching that motivation, inspirational path to then go into this reflective awareness state of really finding out who they are. And it's so interesting to see how many people want to know who they are. They want to uncover the fakeness of social media. They just want to accept themselves. So I really love how you come in with this chapter and with your knowledge, and you even have like a really great social media following now where you are talking about these things. So I guess my question is, how has your knowledge and your influence of Red Oak coaching influence your chapter? Like, what's kind of the inspiration behind it? Where's the connection?
Yeah, I think a great question. I think it's two-sided, right? So, even in the journey of becoming a coach, most coaches you encounter have experienced a life of some level of hardship on some scale, right? And that's usually the thing that they share and coach around. And it's no different for me. The difference was in my journey of healing and learning to actually be my most authentic self, it required me being able to sit with those most uncomfortable parts of myself, those most uncomfortable parts of my experience that I judge, right? And to be able to hold space for that and to be able to see it and integrate it so that I can actually be in a place of acceptance instead of resistance of myself. That was then, along with my training and then the work that I was doing outside to actually move into this field, really the passion came from knowing what that experience was like, that experience of loneliness, that experience of, not being seen for who I think I am or feel I truly am. And also feeling a lot of just like unresolved pain that I felt like I was hiding, and then in turn wasn't actually showing up in my life. And that was something very characteristic I saw with all of my clients. And it's not uncommon that you attract a client that's very similar to the things you've experienced, because it's just the things you've learned and you've grown through. And so you can share that wisdom and hopefully condense time for someone. If you can save someone potential, year or more of pain because they're unaware of something that if you've gone through it, you can kind of just show them like, hey, did you know that this was something else that you could do, or you could see it this way? You could hopefully condense so many years of time for them that they now have the speed to take bold action and literally create a whole new life. But that in turn, I was like really reflecting. I was like, how do I reflect this now into a chapter? And how do I bring the message of the essence of what I do with coaching into a chapter? And it really came down to, becoming aware of our ego constructs. That's the mask, right? The safety mechanism we all have to keep us in a level of what we feel is our safe zone. Even if that safe zone takes you away from all the things you actually want. Maybe you want a relationship. Maybe you want a new, financial earning. Maybe you want to live somewhere else. But ego says, no, I've lived at home in this city, in this town, these people know me, and I have this job, and that's okay. And, the person I'm seeing right now is okay. I'm not thriving, but, it's okay. So stay with this. And that becomes both the, it becomes both the place of safety and comfort, but it also becomes your trap, because now you actually stop living life to its fullest. Like when we say, we are infinite beings, that's not a joke. We can literally be, do, or have anything. Like the reality is we limit ourselves and become masterful at limiting ourselves. We become so good at giving excuses and reasons on why we're not living the life we know we could be living. And then it's because of them. It's because of this. It's because of that past, right? And if you can actually shift a person back into their original knowing, that's the key. Everyone who talks about spirituality, like, it's not something new you get. It's an awakening. It's a remembering. If you're in a dream and all of a sudden, a tiger is chasing you, and all of a sudden, you think with your life's on the line, and then you're like, I'm going to jump off this cliff, or I'm going to fight, or whatever. And in the moment that the attack happens, you wake up, right? Yeah. And then you're like, do you now, like, maybe you have an anxious sweat. or maybe you just laugh, or maybe you're just like, okay, I'm going back to sleep. But you don't ever really look and say, is the lion in here, right? Is the tiger in the house? We know instantly, once we know, it's gone. It was an illusion. It was not something that was actually affecting me. That's the same with our mental stories. Most of the stories we're experiencing about ourselves, this continual story that we're just telling ourselves privately, why we're not having the income we want, why we're not with the woman or the guy we want to be with, why we're not living in a better place, why we're not doing any number of things on the list. It's a story centered around a fear that is holding us from just realizing we're free to go and take action and get the thing we want, right? And so 99% of the unveiling for people is for them to realize that their fear, it might be warranted, but it doesn't need to hold them back. It doesn't need to keep them from living the life that they truly know they're capable of living, because it is only one life, and it's your life to take responsibility for it. When you do, there's freedom in that, right? Like that whole concept for me was a big wake-up call. And a lot of the work, again, in the book is around acceptance and authenticity and being able to be okay being vulnerable, first with yourself and then with someone else. Because we start lying to the world when we start lying to ourselves, when we start telling ourselves that honest truth. And I really got deep into a gentleman named David Goggins in the last 2 months and read his book. And he's an incredible athlete, and like he's gone through a very difficult background. People probably already know him. You can Google him. He's known as the hardest man on earth, right? And his book is called You Can't Hurt Me. But in every interview you see of him, what he describes is his own journey of going through a battle with himself, a war with himself, and that war fueled him to lose a bunch of weight, to go into the Navy, to do the SEALs training multiple times, to run 100 miles in a day, to do thousands of pull-ups in a day. And all of that then, at a certain point, was because he didn't have at his very core, and he talks about this at the last chapter, he didn't have that deep self-acceptance of himself. He didn't have the deep awareness of himself in the sense of like, I had a really bad past, and he did. He had a really traumatic one. And there was a reason that, that impacted his life the way it did. But what he did was he took responsibility for himself and said, I'm going to now start facing myself. And so what he did was he looked in the mirror, and he called it the accountability mirror. And that's why I'm bringing it up. The ability for him to stop lying to himself required him to look at himself in the mirror, in the eyes, and say, why are you doing what you're doing? What do you want to be doing? What are the things you're right now doing that are holding you back that if you had someone right here watching you every single minute and you are accountable to that person, you wouldn't be getting away with those same things, right? And so he had to make himself the person he was most accountable to, which is really the aim. Like that is the aim. The functional adult who's a high achiever, like, Richard Branson, Elon Musk, these guys are incredibly accountable. Like Elon Musk isn't running 2 companies by just kind of laxing around. You know what I mean? So when we can do that with ourselves, the game changes. And so that was really, again, taking these learnings from my own journey, from the work I do with my clients, and then wanting to give that in the chapter in a way that, we know teenagers are going to be reading this book. We know adults are going to be reading this book. If I can hopefully, just share from the experience I've had, any kind of gold to hopefully help someone in their own dark place and realize like there's another way, that is really the essence. And the title, I think we've talked about this too, Be in the Conversation. The whole aim is opening the conversation, right? And most people are scared to be judged, so they don't want to be in the conversation. Mm-hmm. And that's why you guys are so great with the way you create a space of complete non-judgment and complete openness for, new and burgeoning authors who have like a desire to want to change the world, and maybe in another circle would have been judged, but in our circle, we're fully, appreciated and celebrated for that in a way that then now we have this powerful product to share with people, And it's going to change lives. That's the truth. We know that when you read Be in the Conversation, it's going to shift you because you're not getting only one voice. You're getting 12 voices as one. And it's like, it hits.
It does. Like you said, there's 12 authors from different perspectives, different backgrounds, sharing different things. Sameer, you just dropped a lot of gold. I hope everybody is taking some notes. Yeah. Clipping these, send us the clips. Like, we want to repost this stuff. Sameer, you have been amazing. Thank you so far.
No stress.
And Oh, even Mary, she's like saying, excellent, Sameer. Mary Long is also
Mary.
of
Chapters.
our authors who wrote a chapter, and she said, embracing all sides of argument, all perspectives of conversation leads to most unity. And
Yes, agree.
are so right. But Sameer, I think we have to come back to the initial question here, and that is, how do we look into that mirror and reflect without judging ourselves? Like, you can look into the mirror all you want, but what if you start criticizing yourself? You know, how do you avoid
Where do you draw
that?
the line between criticism and, okay, let's do better?
No, really good question. So this is the interesting thing, right? Like, and I'm just going to be as real as I can, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You already have been living with yourself in judgment of yourself. Like we've all already been living with the part of ourselves that's judging ourselves, right? Kicking our own butts, right? And there's that version of it, like you said, Ali, like, oh, that's positive, like constructive, like, okay, maybe you shouldn't eat that extra thing of pizza. Or maybe if you go to bed early tonight, you'll be able to wake up and do that workout or meditate for work, right? Or maybe don't say this to this person right now while you know they're rattled. It's probably going to cause them to escalate. Like those kind of awarenesses, they come in and you kind of know, and then you're like, I think I'm just going to have the pizza. You know, I think I'm just going to stay up till 2 tonight and just watch the movie, you know? So then we make kind of agreements, or we like make kind of like, what's it called? Compromises with ourselves. Right. And so then those compromises over time kind of build. But what happens when it's, I would say, an internalized negative narrative, like something that is the equivalent of like, you know, and this is where it's a lot of childhood healing for most of the adults I work with. You know, we've all experienced a childhood. Some of those childhoods are more aggressive, more emotionally volatile, more violent, more traumatic than anyone could ever imagine or expect or necessarily ask for, right? But that's the reality of it. That's just the experience for some people, right? And so what that does is it trains you into avoiding that kind of pain or thrashing or whatever that experience is. And so then you build mechanisms, you build ways to avoid that. We become very good at being like ninja artists at protecting ourselves, right? That's the ego. It's doing this like ultimate dance to keep us safe. Don't get hurt. You've been hurt. You don't want that to happen again. So then all of a sudden the coping mechanisms lead to dysfunctional activities. So potentially a coping mechanism might be overeating, right? And a lot of people, we know just through obesity numbers, right? A lot of people overeat. Why do we overeat? Why do we feel? And there's infinite studies on this stuff, right? But we know emotional eating is connected to a want for control in an environment where you're not feeling safe and you don't feel you have control. So when you have increased stress, you know, it makes sense that something else is going to be used to sedate that stress if you don't know how to cope with that stress. So going and looking in the mirror is a choice. It's a choice to say, this is who I am. Like it's me brushing my teeth, looking, and it's the same guy as it was today, as it was, 12 years ago, and it's going to be me still years beyond, or vice versa. Right. And what it is not avoiding that. The avoidance leads you into a story. Okay, I'm overweight. Maybe I'm overweight right now because I have stress from exams coming up, and I don't have much money, so I'm just gonna buy. So you go into story with yourself, right? And that's just one example. This goes into a variety of examples, right? But that story with ourselves, when we start to believe it, we now start buying our own BS. You know what I mean? Yeah. And when you buy your own BS, and BS for people don't know is belief systems, right? We start buying our own belief systems, right? And when we do that, we get lost in the story. Now we actually believe life is only a certain way for me, and I can only experience certain things, or certain outcomes are available. So the whole work with coaching and accountability and retraining your subconscious, it's about bursting through those belief systems to the realization that you were actually never those belief systems. Until that's the whole journey for a coach, to lead a person through their mind, for them to realize they weren't these belief systems to begin with. 99.99% of our insecurities were insecurities that were passed down to us by a parent, a family friend, a teacher, a mentor, someone who gave us their interpretation of life, which is their belief. And then they gave it to us and said, here, take this. I don't want it, and then you keep it and you internalize it. And you're like, but is the world like this? And if you don't question deeper, you'll start to believe the world is like this. And so Mhm.
Yeah, go.
So that's the essence. So when you say, look, how do we help people who are really already in a judgment, I really try and work with people to make them realize that the deepest self is non-judgment. It has space already. Not going to get space, it already is. And if we're looking at, the earth as a reflection of that, the earth allows for everything. It allows for jungles, it allows for Siberian, tigers, it allows for whales, it allows for rhinos, it allows for humans of every color, of every gender, of every background, right? Doesn't matter what humans are doing, it's allowed. I often say, because it's such a stark contrast, but we have, we know it already, child trafficking, and we have Zen monasteries on the same planet. So in a very similar way, our mind is like this. It's a canvas. It's a space where everything already exists. We're infinite. So when you actually start characterizing, okay, I'm not wanting to be this side of it, I only want to be this side, we start locking ourselves into a very tight box that isn't natural to the way thoughts work. And that's a lot of, again, the coaching is around teaching people, you don't need to own your thoughts. You need to allow them and observe them, because they're just happening. And there is a spectrum. It's like TV, right? Or let me give you this example. If you're listening to Spotify and there's a playlist, right? And it's a song, and let's say you're listening to a song and you don't like the song. Mm-hmm. Would you keep listening to it? Would you put it on repeat one and let me keep listening to this song I don't like, right? And then the question is, why do we do that with our thinking? We know we don't like the way we're thinking about ourselves. Oh, you don't look good. You're not going to have the money. You don't have this. You don't have that. You don't have that, right? But you keep telling yourself the same song and you just let it keep playing. You're with people, but you're still telling yourself why you're not good enough to be with those people. All this kind of thing, right? So change the song. Change the playlist. If you don't like what you're seeing and hearing and feeling, you can change it. But that means you have to be willing to see it, to acknowledge it, to then turn the dial. So if you see in the mirror, okay, I want to make health changes, acknowledge where you are, acknowledge the wholeness of it, and then make a new choice.
Yeah, because it comes down to, at the end of the day, like you said, becoming aware of your choices, right? Making those conscious choices to say, it's like you said, allowing the thoughts to flow through you, right? Allowing them to not have that stranglehold on them, the bottleneck, and filter out. But it's like, all right, let them go, because your brain's processing every thousands of things, right? You're looking at my face, Race's face, Sameer's face, looking at the little things, processing. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, why can't I be on there, right? Making those little things. It's allowing the thoughts to go, not trying to bottleneck them, to slow them down, but allowing them to go and just picking up and being aware here and there of those negative thinking, saying, oh, you know what, maybe I shouldn't judge in that way, or like, oh, that's interesting, let me put that aside, I don't want to think about that no more, right? And then you focus on the other things. And also, it's hard to be yourself if you don't know who you are, right?
Yes.
One thing that you really said that I really liked is that, how things get passed down to you from generations, from school. If you don't know who you are, you're going to take on the outside input of saying, you're a good kid, you're a bad kid, you do these type of behaviors, you're that, you do this, you're that, if you act in this way, you're this and that, right? Instead of oh, everyone, you're either or, rather than and and more, as you just said, right? So it's just being aware of, oh, when did I come up with the belief of, oh, I can't, chill over here? Or when did I come up with the belief of, I can't excel? And one thing that I've seen on social media now, my sister mentioned it earlier, was the movement of acceptance and reflection. I think that's fantastic, but you see where I get a little bit upset sometimes seeing it is where people try to accept toxic behaviors, like you said, where they start to make those compromises and create the stories to tell themselves why they're here, and then they have people to back them up. I think it's important, like you said, to become aware, look at yourself, and allow yourself to become accountable, because if not, you're gonna have that Jimmy the Cricket, right, from Pinocchio, come in your head and continue to tell you that that story of this is why you're here, you got to do this, and you go into that bad habit cycle of, I know where I'm supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Okay, you get upset and mad at yourself, and then you circle back down to that easy reward so you can get that boost and entertainment and engagement all over again. So you enter that deadly cycle, which is what Sameer is here to help break you out of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said, Ali. And like, if I could just add one thing there is like, most of the time, what you just emphasized was the key. When you can ask a question and be in a place of curious questioning, like being in awareness,
Mm-hmm.
you can actually you can like level the ground. You can undo something that might have been affecting you for years, right? And that's something I just want the viewers to really consider is like, when you're really concluded about something, that you like your mind is made up, you're also then closing yourself off to seeing all the other possibilities. Like, I really work with people to say, stay in the question of yourself. Most of the time we're like, no, I'm this type of way. My dad was like this. This is why I'm like this,
Yes.
right? Or this is how I've always been. Like, we go into these conclusive narratives around ourselves, and it limits us from doing something different. We are, as human beings, like literally capable of anything. Like, the fact that every human, for the most part of it, learns how to walk from being a baby who's just, come out of a womb.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty mind-blowing. Like, the fact that we know how to move our fingers, like, we've learned incredible things. Now we go to masterful levels. Like, people become musicians, artists, right? People go and excel in exercise, all this kind of stuff. We can do anything. Stop looking at the world like it's complete, because like, a lot of people look at like the world is complete, and so they don't need to show up in it. Like, it's all been done, and that is like, I would say, the biggest fallacy towards allowing yourself to just lose out on life, because it is literally an interconnected web. So everyone matters. Everyone already matters. And that's like the hammer home thing to get across people, like, especially people who are really suffering with their self-esteem. It's like, if you weren't there, how many people would be affected by that? How many friends and people you don't even know you've impacted would be affected by that? And there's people who will just feel so justified, no, I'm not impacting anybody. And it's just not the case, right? But when they're concluded, it's very hard to see the world differently, to open up a person in through a question and allow that question to really settle in and open their space up to something new. That's where magic happens. That's where then a whole new life can be seen, and it's almost like, give yourself the opportunity to trust that life is bigger than you. If you can do that, then it's like, you're set. Life can actually surprise you,
I love that. And two things you mentioned. One was that curiosity bit, right? As that child, be that curious child you once were. And how you said life's like, you allow life to take control, take the reins, but you're still present. You're not being that passive person to say, life, whatever, I'll go with the flow. You're still present. You're just allowing life to guide you a little bit more, right? You're giving life a little bit more space to say, why don't you experience this, experience that, but not completely backing out and being lazy or whatever.
You're actually an active participant. It's like, if you've ever gotten those like spontaneous impulses, those aren't always coming from you as the way you think of yourself. It's coming from life, the deeper intelligence that we're all tuned into. But if you're so busy in your thinking you can't hear it, then you're going to ignore it. But like, let's say next time you're at a Starbucks, and I recommend everyone feel like this if it comes up. See if you feel inclined to buy the person behind you a coffee, right? That inclination to do that, it's a ripple effect in which you have no way of kind of watching what the unfoldment is. But I just remember from my old days when I worked at Starbucks, you give someone a free coffee, it can sometimes change your whole day, because context matters. Some people are suffering silently and no one knows. And you doing small acts like that, which sometimes don't come from our conscious mind, they come from our deeper heart, like that internal space where we're all connected. You get that impulse, let me go and buy this homeless person food. Let me go do something spontaneous that is so uncharacteristic. But those have huge, profound impacts, So I encourage everyone to listen to that voice and do something like that out of nowhere.
I love that, because one other thing that you said, buy the person a coffee behind you. I've seen some videos where someone will be like, you know what, I'm feeling generous today, let me buy the meal behind him, and then they realize it's like a family of 8 in the car, or like $5, like $100, and like, you know what, maybe I don't know if I have that today, but
if you don't have it, that's fine. But I sometimes say, just do it anyways, because if you got the impulse, it's not coming from a place that you have to really overthink. Most of our life is overthinking. So if you start to trust that place that's guiding you through impulse and feeling, and you just act on it, take conscious action on it, you become this interesting vessel for life, and things start to happen in ways you can't imagine and plan for.
Agree. And No, I 100% agree. And those impulses to, help out, that homeless person who you see down there, while we're growing up as kids, right, we don't have the perceptions of, society yet, right? We don't have the stereotypes input in, we don't have the judgments and the experiences that you develop through life. It's okay to accept the experiences as long as you don't pass it on to that another person, right? I think it's okay because that's how we learn. Back in the days when the saber-tooth tigers were chasing us, you got to understand that, okay, that will kill me. It killed my grandpa or whatever. I got to be aware of it now, right? So we're used to taking on the experiences that's happened to us around us, passed on from people. It's when you start to implement the judgments today. So back to the homeless thing, right? Children, they don't have that. And you'll see, like, oh, I remember for me personally, I still do this today. If I had extra change back in the day, I was like, hey, Dad, let's help out this person, whatever, right? You don't know. Or let's, I remember one time we were coming back from a baseball game. I had like an extra can of Coke or like some gummies, and I was taking on the train, saw a homeless person. I offered to give it to them. They didn't want it, but it was that offering, right? It's like, let me help out a person. Literally the other day, Race and I, literally yesterday, we were coming back from home. A little kid was, walking with her mom. The mom, we stopped, let it go, and the kid waved back at us. Most people will not do that today, right? Because they fear the judgment, they feel the awkwardness. But we wave right back at them, and the smile and the joy in the little kid's face changes it all, right? So those impulses, when you act on them, right, to do those, sporadic things.
Even smiling, it's so simple. Like not a lot of people do it. Like everyone thinks you got to be kind of like a one way, and it's this whole mask mentality of I've got to be perceived a certain way. I want to be perceived as good looking. I want to be perceived as the cool guy or, the hot girl or whatever the ideas are. And then you start to get trapped by it because now you can't even move out of flow. Like you can't move out of that box because you feel like you're going to look a certain way. But it's when we actually move in flow that we're actually, living, and our true self comes through our energy, like every time you and I talk, we always just have a free flow, and that's because we're not trying to do something. We're not planning. We allow these things to happen. And that's kind of the magic of what this creates. And we've seen that with this, even with the way being the conversation came to be.
Fantastic. One other thing that you didn't mention earlier was, thinking like, you have the idea of yourself. Actually, on that point, where you just said, where you're trying to be a certain person, I was just watching a video with the CEO the other day, and he said, at school, we're always taught to be individual people, right? Individual, you get graded for individual. Even in group projects, you get marked individually. But once you change from a child's life or teenager's life into the adult world, it's all about working in a group, being a part of the team, being a contributor, right? And he said in the interview, it's easy to lie and, say different things, up yourself, I'm the best individual here, whatever. But what I like to do is I'll pay for the person to come into our office, work, and see how they operate in the teams. Will they ask the questions that they don't know how to do yet? Will they be that interactive person? Because at the end of the day, we operate in like a big machine. All the different sprockets and gears are working together. And if you want to be the one to work independent, you're going to jam up the whole thing. So they're trying to test you a little bit.
Yeah.
Can you be individual enough where people don't have to supervise you, but are you open enough to still work, function in the gears where you can ask questions, help them lend a hand, and do a little bit more, not exceeding because you want, you do more because you want to, not because it's expected of you, right? It's not like, if I do this, the CEO will love me. Do it because you feel like it, and it's creating that environment. So Raisa, we're going to take it away. Samir, we have a surprise. We're going to do some speed round questions with you. This is
okay, cool.
That you got 30 seconds or
let's go.
Yeah, Ali's going to set up the timer, and then I think we will wrap it up because this has been such a great conversation.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's do it.
Starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Personal development books or business?
Personal development books. Yeah, I'd say the...
This or that.
This or that.
Next. Personal development books.
Yeah.
Physical strength or mental strength?
Mental strength.
Water or soda?
Water.
Movies or TV shows?
Movies.
Walk in a forest or walks on a beach?
10 seconds.
Oh, walks on a beach.
Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Japan or France?
Japan.
Thailand or England?
Thailand.
Bentley or Rolls Royce?
Bentley.
All right.
Nice.
Here I thought it was going to be like list, I thought
No, and that's all I'll get Bentley, my man.
That's fun. That's
guy.
fun.
We
I like that.
on Instagram, we have the Playmaker saying goat,
Yeah,
speaking
greatest of all.
emoji.
Yes,
So
he's speaking some facts right there.
exactly. You've been doing such I think this was so amazing, and like you were saying, it's such a free flow. So free flow that we have one of our authors, Mary Long, who is like just really so in tune with this,
sharing her experiences.
yeah, in tune with this what's it called? This conversation here. Yeah. Thanks, Ali. So thank you so much, Sameer, for for being here on this interview. Thank you for our guests as well. This has been amazing. If you want to get the book, I think you should get the book right now.
Right there.
You can get the ebook on Amazon, and we also have the paperback available. Or you can contact Sameer on his Red Oak coaching page and actually get it from him as well. Get it on exactly. So get it on Amazon. This was presented by APSO.
Awesome people
Shaping our world.
Remember, you are awesome.
And you can make the world a better place. Bye.